You can considerably speed up your WordPress website with 3 simple steps and increase your page speed from this to this. By optimizing your WordPress speed, your website benefits from several things. A very nice one is that it will tremendously improve your site's user experience. Your website visitor will stay longer on your website, and the number of users who switch away from your website after opening the first page will be lower than before. You may have heard about this metric as the so-called bounce rate. Even better, your website will get improved and higher search rankings on Google after a while. That will result in more users finding your website and getting more traffic to it. There are several different reasons your WordPress website can be slow. The most common reasons are no caching and a too big page size. In addition to the 2 main reasons, several other variables can affect your website speed. For example, the number or type of plugins you have installed, the configuration of your server, or the code behind your theme or plugins. Also, a slow network connectivity or server response can be the reason for slow loading times. It is essential to keep in mind that not all of these recommended actions might result in an immediate improvement to your website loading time. Let's start with some benchmark tests to get an overview and understanding of your own website speed. So for demonstration, I have created a site with WordPress 5.6, a handful of popular plugins, and the free version of the theme Astra. I then created a sample page, including a few huge images and videos. For benchmarking and analyzing the website speed, I am using the free tools Pingdom and Google PageSpeed Insights. Let's take a look at the analytics. Google's PageSpeed Insights shows a desktop score of 47 and a speed index of 3.6 seconds. Pingdom shows a load time of 2.17 seconds, a page size of 24 megabytes and 27 requests. Wait, before we finally begin, I recommend creating a clone of your website where you can safely test all of the steps from this video. The following instructions are easy to reproduce on your site, but it's still possible that one of your plugins or your theme does not play well with these adjustments. So before anything breaks on your production site, apply all modifications for testing purposes on your website's clone first. If everything goes well, you can apply the same optimizations to your production site then. For cloning your website quickly, you can use the free plugin WP Staging. It can create a clone with a simple click, and you can try out all possible optimizations in a secure environment. At the end of this video, I will show you a link where you can get it. Let's start with the first step, installing a cache plugin. A caching plugin saves the visible HTML output of your website in temporary files on your website. Executing code from a plugin or theme is very time expensive because the server has to do numerous calculations to do the execution. With caching, these calculations need to be done only once. Whenever a visitor opens your site, the caching plugin checks first if there is an existing cache for specific content. If the content is already cached, it directly outputs the pre-calculated HTML output instead of executing all the code again. Then the server has more free resources to load your website faster. Only installing a caching plugin and adjusting it correctly can make your website 10 times faster or even more. I recommend WP Supercache from WordPress.org, the official WordPress plugin repository. Automatic develops this plugin. That's the same company that's responsible for the WordPress core development. It's free to use, very powerful, and simple if you understand how it works. This plugin is in many options even as powerful as premium plugins, such as the popular one WP Rocket that you may have heard before. Frankly, WP Rocket has a friendlier looking user interface and might be easier to use for first-time beginners, but don't worry. I will take your hand and show you all the clicks you need to do to get the same results as you would use a premium caching plugin, so you get the same speed results for free. Go to the plugin store and search for WP Supercache. You will find a direct link to this plugin at the end of the video. After installing and activating the WP Supercache plugin, let's set it up. It will be possible to activate the cache via the Easy section by choosing Caching On. But at this point we go to the Advanced area, as we can configure the settings here more precisely. So go to the Caching section and click on the Enable Caching button. Then choose the cache delivery method Simple. In the Miscellaneous section, please select the following options. Disable caching for logged-in visitors. That is useful if you want to ensure that your logged-in visitors always receive uncached, fresh and new content. Don't cache pages with get parameters. This selection ensures that dynamic pages that are different for every user, such as shopping carts, will never be cached. compress pages so they are served more quickly to visitors activates gzip compression, which speeds up your website significantly. Please note that some servers already compress the data themselves, leading to errors when starting the option. To see if the server already uses gzip compression, I use an online test like the Gift of Speed gzip test. If gzip is already enabled, disable the compress option in WP Supercache. Cache rebuild shows cached content to the user even if the cache is updated due to new content. This means your visitor will never see uncached content except for the first time generation of the cache. 304 browser caching tells the user to load the website from a browser cache if there is already cached content in the user's browser instead of connecting to the server. That can lower the CPU load of your server even more. Then scroll down to the tab Advanced. Here we activate mobile device support. A simple click is sufficient, but WP Supercache points out that, depending on the design, an additional plugin may have to be installed. Since we use a standard WordPress theme, this is not necessary for us. You have to check this individually, depending on the theme you use. If your site works fine on mobile devices after activating this option, you are good to use it. Clear all cache files when a post or page is published or updated ensures that the cache will get cleared so that new content can be shown. Finally, the last step in the settings of the cache plugin is the preloading option, which you can find under the preload tab. The preload settings essentially makes the plugin cache all your site's posts and pages periodically. You can set the time interval between each cache refresh. This time interval is a very crucial setting. In a shared hosting environment, you should optimally set it to once a day. That's every 1440 minutes. If you update your site twice a day, then you can select the time interval between each cache refreshed to 720 minutes. With this setting, the entire cache will be refreshed twice a day. Such a low refresh time can incur an additional server load. I would recommend not to use a lower value in shared hosting environments, since it might and most probably will be counted as server resource overuse. However, if you're on a VPS or dedicated server, you can set the refresh rate as low as 60 minutes. It's worthwhile to know that the number of posts and pages you have on your site affects the resources required for each preload cache refresh operation. An optimal refresh time for a dedicated server on a high traffic site would be 2 hours. I have checked the relevant checkboxes and have set the cache refresh interval to 1440 minutes. You are free to choose any value. At this point, I'd have to say that I'm thrilled if you give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. It is the best way to support me if this video is helpful to you. I post a similar video every week that could help optimize your WordPress website. For the next adjustments, such as combining JavaScript and CSS files and optimizing images and the HTML output, we use another plugin named Autoptimize, which we can install from the WordPress plugin store. I will show you a link to this plugin at the end of the video. Whether or not you should enable these options depends mainly on how your server is configured. Every website loads files via the protocol HTTP 1.1 or the newer HTTP 2. With HTTP 1.1, all files will be downloaded one after another. For instance, one file must be fully loaded to the visitor before the server can begin to send the next file. To reduce the number of downloaded files, Autoptimize can combine those files. So instead of sending 36 files, your server only needs to download 20 files, resulting in a faster total loading time. Even though a combined CSS or JavaScript file's total file size is bigger, every single request comes with additional overhead, like the extra time a request needs to establish a connection to the server. That's the reason why it can be faster to load one big file instead of loading multiple files subsequently. So if your server runs HTTP 1.1, it's recommended to aggregate all the CSS and JavaScript files on your site. On the contrary, the HTTP 2 protocol can download multiple files simultaneously. If that's the setting on your server, it would be counterproductive to activate file aggregation. HTTP 2 will be much faster if it can download multiple small files simultaneously instead of downloading one big file. Therefore, the combination of the CSS and JavaScript files does not make sense here. To see if your site is using HTTP 2, you can use KeyCDN's HTTP test. You will get the link at the end of the video. Select the JS, CSS and HTML tab. Activate Optimize JavaScript code and aggregate JS files. This combines JavaScript files as recommended by benchmark tools like Pingdom. After selecting Optimized JavaScript code and saving it, we can see that instead of 13 files, now only 4 need to be loaded. Deactivate the options Force JavaScript in head and Add try-catch wrapping, and keep the default values for exclude scripts from Autoptimize. Activate the options only if you aggregate JavaScript files and you experience issues on your website. Then you can exclude particular JavaScript files from the combining process. Activate them only if you aggregate JavaScript files and you experience issues on your website. Then you can exclude particular JavaScript files from the combining process. I'd like to make this very clear. Optimizing the JavaScript can break things on your website. I highly recommend testing this step on a staging site before making the adjustments on your production website. The next step is the optimization of CSS files. Click on Optimize CSS code. If your server uses HTTP 1.1, aggregate CSS files and the option also aggregate inline CSS will further improve the page speed core. It's the same thing as aggregating JavaScript files and inline JavaScript files, but only for CSS. As with the JavaScripts, the number of CSS files is reduced from 11 to 4. Keep this option disabled if your server uses HTTP 2. Generate data URI for images can result in fewer HTTP requests, but not after you set up a CDN and serve images through that. This graphic illustrates how a user accesses your website server. By using a CDN, your files are cached in parallel on multiple different servers worldwide. As soon as a visitor tries to access your website, the content delivery network automatically connects them to the nearest server. This ensures that the visitor receives the content of the website as soon as possible. If you're using a CDN, you will need to disable it. Keep the option inline and defer CSS disabled. Use this only if you aggregated CSS files and experience visual issues on your website. Then you can exclude particular CSS files from the combining process. Activate the option Optimize HTML code. When optimizing HTML files, spaces and comments are removed from the code. This will reduce the file size, and smaller files usually load faster than larger ones. The last section to edit are the MISC options. Enable the first 4 options, including Save Aggregated Script/CSS as static files, Minify Excluded CSS and JS files, Enable 404 fallbacks, and also Optimize for logged-in editors/administrators. If you are logged in and experience issues with a page builder or another backend plugin, disable the last option. Let's move on to the tab Extra. Google Fonts can slow down the loading time as they are pulled from external resources. I prefer the Combine and Link and Head option since it improves load time without seeing the fonts load. If you are in the European Union, this also makes your website more GDPR compliant, as these external resources are not loaded from Google any longer. But you should also test the last Google Font option, Combine and Load Fonts asynchronously with WebFont.js, and see which yields better results in the page speed tool. Then enable Remove Emojis, because the emoji responsible JavaScript is bloated and not beneficial for a good loading time. Autoptimize can also help make images load faster by using an integrated third-party service called ShortPixel. If you want to try this out, go to the Images section. Choose Optimize Images. URLs on your website will be changed to point to ShortPixel CDN. ShortPixel reduces or adapts 100 pictures per month for free, which might be enough if you have a small or medium website. Image Optimization Quality. You can find the right balance between compression and quality by clicking on You can test compression levels here. You will be led to shortpixel.com, where you can visually see the differences in each compression level from ShortPixel by uploading one of your pictures. Which one is the best for you? Lossy stands for most compression and most quality loss. Glossy for medium compression and little quality loss, and lossless for low compression and the lowest quality loss. Go back to Autoptimize and enter your settings. Load WebP in supported browsers. Enable this so that Autoptimize will serve images in the WebP format, which lets you compress images even further without compromising quality by much. The option Lazy Load Images has to be enabled as well. Lazy Load Images results in fewer requests and is recommended by Google for faster load times. Maybe you wonder why I don't mention a CDN or DNS service like Cloudflare, as many other tutorials recommend for further optimization. I think for most websites switching the DNS service step is not required, as it comes with some potential drawbacks. For instance, if you switch to a DNS-based CDN service like Cloudflare, you give away control over your website and its traffic. I often stumble over websites running under the Cloudflare DNS service where I am required to fill a CAPTCHA before I can even access the website. Such CAPTCHAs can lead to visitors' high bounce rate and affect search rankings negatively. A DNS service could also redirect a part of your traffic to somewhere else and you would not even notice it immediately. So keep this in mind when you like to give a third-party DNS service control over your domain. After the optimizations we applied, your website is already so fast that it will not limit Google ranking, so in this video we will not cover the Cloudflare service. If you see this differently and you have another opinion about using Cloudflare, let us discuss it and write to me in the comments. After enabling the cache and optimizing all files and images, I will go for a second speed test to see what has changed and compare the results before and after. On page speed and sites, the page previously scored a 47 on desktop and now has a near perfect desktop score of 95. The speed index has been reduced from 3.6 to 1.3 seconds. On pingdom, the page previously loaded in 2.17 seconds with a 24 MB page size and 27 requests. With the new speed test, you will see there is a significant improvement on all three values. The load time went down to 1.89 seconds, the page size is just over 5 MB and the number of requests is at 17. Please let me ask you again to give this video a like and to subscribe to our channel. I release a similar video every week that could help optimize your WordPress website. Also, don't wonder if your site does not get the full page score of 100. For technical reasons, it's most often not possible to follow every possible page speed suggestion. Even Google's official website is far away from a perfect page speed score. Just make sure that your website loads in 1 to 3 seconds for your visitors and do not worry too much if your site has a page speed score of 70 and not 90 or higher. Try to get a high as possible page score without breaking your website. The rest of the time stay focused on a good user experience to lower the bounce rate and improve Google's search rankings instead of continually trying to improve your website's artificial page score. Page loading time is indeed one Google ranking factor out of hundreds, but as long as you keep the loading time under 3 seconds, Google will consider your site as a fast one, which will not negatively affect your search rankings. If the previous adjustments led to a significant improvement of your website's loading time lower than 3 seconds, you are done now. You find links to all the tools that I use in this video on wpstaging.com/speedup. You can find this link in the video description below. If you follow all the steps mentioned here, I guarantee that your website will be much faster after doing so. Make some speed comparisons before and after and post it in the comments to show us how your site speed improved. Absolutely fantastic would be a click on the subscribe and like button down below this video. It does not cost you anything, but it's the best thing to help me to grow this new channel. Stay healthy and have a great time.